immigration officials and border agents are up against, what these facilities look like, and that's exactly what we did today, visiting multiple facilities. And then we came together, and for the last hour spoke about what some of our key takeaways were, and what some of our next step would be as we try to search for solutions. And I can tell you what some of my takeaways were. I was very proud of the work that is being done by our Border Patrol agents, by our immigration officials, the work that they're doing to care for the people in their custody and to enforce the laws that are in place. And it was also sad that they are put in a situation where they have inadequate resources. And that's a problem of Congress's making, not theirs. They're doing the best they can with the resources they have. And I feel talking to them today, we get some real ideas about how we can not only provide additional resources, but make changes to the laws that will make their situation more tenable and will provide for better care of the people who are coming across our borders now. So I'm looking forward to the ongoing discussion with this group. As Dean said, I'm hopeful as well that we can come together and lead the way to find some real solutions here.
Other members? Tom Reed.
Well, thank you. First, I'm Tom Reed. I chair the Problem Solvers Caucus on the Republican side with Josh Gottheimer on the Democratic side, my New Jersey colleague who wasn't able to join us today. But I just wanted to recognize the leadership of not only Lloyd Smucker on our Republican side and Dean Phillips on our Democratic side for putting this trip together and leading on this trip, and their team and their offices putting together. But the men and women you see up here is responding to the silent voice of America that's saying enough is enough with politics. We saw today real human beings caught up in this broken immigration system. And that is a direct result. Their tragedy, their horror, their fear, their whole process. And these are also the agents, not just the people that are coming here to the border. These guys are dealing with this day in and day out. And I just got to tell you, this is Congress's fault. This isn't a Democrat's fault. This isn't a Republican's fault. We can sit here and continue to play this game of assessing political blame one side or the other, but those border agents are going to continue to suffer in this broken system. Those men and women that we saw that are going through that system are going to continue to suffer as they go through that broken system. And I'm just proud of the leadership these men and women are using their position in Congress to step forward with the Problem Solvers Caucus leading the way to say, no more. It's time to fix this broken system. So thank you for doing this, Lloyd and Dean, for what you've done here, and everyone else for coming.
Anybody else want to make some remarks?
Question?
Well, one more. I do want to say one more thing, and this is an invitation to everybody in this country to do what we did today. Democrats and Republicans that found something more important than politics, and that's humanity. And I think it's time that we all extend the invitation to everybody in this country to turn off the TVs for a minute and set down your phones and reduce your anger and go spend some time with someone who has a different life experience and sees things perhaps differently than you do and may pray differently than you and eat differently than you and come from different places than you. If there's a quick result perhaps from this trip, it might be just a baby step forward to inspire that in this country. That's what this group is about, and I'm so honored to be a part of it. So I want to make sure we express that. Questions?
I mean, y'all call yourself the Problem Solvers Caucus. What are you going to do after you saw it firsthand? You saw what, these people that are in there and the agents that are taking care of them, the officers, you saw that. How are we going to fix this?
Well, I'll just jump in and just say, I think the track record, it was Problem Solvers Caucus that broke the supplemental money that started flowing here. That was a positive thing we saw. Some of our colleagues came here a month ago and have come back 30 days later. And as a result of what we did, we broke that partisan gridlock that was tying that up and got that money flowing immediately. So standing together as Democrats and Republicans, we demonstrated to our leadership and to hopefully now the country that we're serious and we're going to move forward on policies that are going to fix this situation. And as to the policy itself, I'll defer to my colleagues.
As far as like what you talk to the people that are on the front line, what specifically were they telling you that they needed that they're not getting now?
I mean, I think we asked several individuals what were some of the top issues that they felt needed to be addressed, and there were specific aspects of the law that they felt would make a significant difference and reduce the incentive of people to come here. One is the Flores law, which requires release after 72 hours. Another is the asylum law, which today is being used in a way that it was not intended. And then another is ensuring that there are sufficient resources for the civilian agencies to take care of the detainees so that the Border Patrol agents, which really are the police, can do their job more effectively. Today, a lot of their resources are going to help people in their custody, which was not part of their original mission. That was just three ideas. What we intend to do as a group over the next weeks and months is continue this discussion and come up with a set of policies. And there'd been some work done on this in the last session, so we have a foundation on which to build, but we intend to come up with a set of policies that we intend to promote in Congress and hopefully see passed.
I'm going to jump in front of you.
Yeah, please.
We'll trade. I'm Abigail Spanberger from Virginia's 7th District. We heard incredible stories of despair and of tragedy throughout the day. And I think a story that stuck with all of us was a story of a woman and her 3 children who died walking through the brush. Their bodies were found by CBP agents, and the agent who told us the story of removing their bodies, this woman and her 3 children who had died on their path, on their way to a better life, a better circumstance. And I'm a mother. I have 3 children myself, and that story really struck home. And the tragedy is not just the tragedy felt by that woman who the hope that she perhaps endeavored to bring to her kids ended when she and her 3 children died, but it's the tragedy of the circumstance and the tragedy of the officers carrying those bodies out. And through our conversations in each of the facilities we visited, it was about identifying all of the pieces of the puzzle here. We so frequently within Congress or within politics are reactive. We have to put a Band-Aid here or a Band-Aid there. But we have to look at, and this is what we've been talking about all day, including in our afternoon session, is what are the policies and how are the policies driving behaviors? How are the policies impacting what we're seeing, either in the way that people are coming here, in how they're applying, in the reactions that we're seeing from our law enforcement officers. And so understanding how the policy is impacting the results for us and getting at some of the root causes, that's what we've been exploring all day. And I think, it is very premature for us to say this is the 3 things. And if we came in here and told you these are the 3 things we should do to fix this, then you shouldn't listen to us, because that's not problem solving. But really it is defining each piece of the problem. And I think that's the conversation we're continuing. We've had conversations with medical professionals that are providing medical aid. What do they need? What do the law enforcement officers need? What are the stories of the people coming here, but to echo some of the hope that exists in the people who still believe that this place is the place of opportunity, that this country is the country they'll risk everything for the possibility of bringing their family here. I think that's also the message that we owe it to them. We owe it to the agents working at the border. We owe it to everyone involved in this tragedy to be inspired by some of that hope of that woman who died with her children, and to believe that we can fix it, to believe that we can be a part of solving it. And that's why I think moving forward, so many of us are committed to really addressing this. Thank you.
I'm Paul Mitchell from Michigan. We've got a border district, the northern border with Canada. That same agent that you're speaking of gave us the answer what we need. He talked about the things he needed, things they were doing, and then he made one last request. He said he's talking to a bunch of members of Congress. He looked at us. Now, this guy's only a year and a half from retiring. He's well past the age he could have retired. He's still doing his job. And he had one final request to us. He asked us to just fix this, to get the job done, please. And the thing that happened today is the discussion about we are committed to working on those policies, a comprehensive set of policies that address the system that is fatally flawed. It is fatally flawed. We're being overwhelmed. Those people out there are being overwhelmed. And as you said, there are people dying. We need to address the problem. And as was said, we need to stop the politics. If nothing else, for the gentleman that stayed well beyond his retirement age and just asked us to fix it.
When is the next time y'all will be discussing these policies that you plan to fix this?
So at the Problem Solvers, well, dinner tonight, yeah. So the Problem Solvers Caucus has been in existence for 2.5 years now, and we have worked on immigration, 8 years, and then formalized 2.5 years ago with the mechanism that is known as today. So we have a working group that is focused on immigration reform, as well as the issues that we're talking about here today specifically. So I think that's going to continue, and as we go forward, as we get to those positions, we have a voting block mechanism, just for you guys who don't know who we are. We will vote together when we get to 75% consensus, and so we go through an extensive process of listening to each other, respecting each other, and coming up with proposals we can support together. And so that, I think, is where this will lead to back in D.C. But in the meantime, we're going to continue conversations.
48 members. Yeah,
and we're 48 members strong, equally divided, 24 Dems, 24 Republicans, committed to each other. And equally united when we get to that consensus.
I know that y'all are equally together, but there's a lot of people in Congress that aren't willing to come together the way y'all are and willing to come to the southern border to see what y'all just saw. Is there any way that you're going to talk to them and say, you guys need to cut the politics out and come to the border and see what we saw?
And my co-chair on the Democratic side is coming next week, so he'll be down too. Please.
Hi, I'm Alyssa Slotkin, Michigan's 8th District, and there are 3 Michiganders on this trip, so we're heavily represented. I think that part of the reason we decided to come down as a group of Democrats and Republicans was to kind of throw away the old mold of just coming down here and using this trip one way or another for politics. And I think that there is just a moment when you see people who are suffering in every chain of this story, right? The people who have come from Central America fearing something, the people who just want to come here and work and make a better life, the Customs and Border folks who were never trained and we never thought to be asking them to do what we're asking them to do right now. Everyone is suffering. And I think that the original idea was to just come down and see it together, and I think we were all taken with how we have a moral responsibility as lawmakers to work on this, to actually put forward a piece of legislation. If our respective leadership isn't supportive of that, it is still our job to try. And I feel very, very strongly that my peers around me understand that moral obligation, because you cannot look away with what is happening in our country in our name down here. So I think it is unusual and it will be tough, but that doesn't abrogate our responsibility to do it.
How did what you saw today change? How did it change the conversation you were having about how to fix the system, how to move forward? Certainly, this probably isn't the first time you were discussing the immigration issue. So what did you see today that changed the conversation, and how was it changed?
And I'll tell you something that we all saw that left an indelible mark, I think, on all of us, and it was an 8-month-old baby in a stroller whose name they didn't know and whose parents they can't identify, being pushed around by an agent with compassion and care, and at least I speak for myself, but that changed it for me, because I saw humanity in all of its forms. And it's one of those untold little stories and moments that I'll think about every time we meet, and every time we face a roadblock, and every time we're criticized by our own members of our own party and others. I'll think about that little baby and think about his future, and I'll think about the person who was pushing him around in his stroller, and that's how I'm going to be inspired. And I wish more of our country, I wish more of our colleagues could, again, just take a moment and let their humanity shine through and understand what our responsibility is of members of Congress and as Americans, and most of all, as humans.
You spoke a lot about how
Quickly.
Did you want me to finish?
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. What did you say?
No, she's fine.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Anthony Gonzalez, Ohio's 16th District. My quick background, my father immigrated here from Cuba in 1960, and immigration's always been important, obviously, to our family. One thing that I saw that, I think you can read about things in books, you can watch the news, you can read reports and all that, and that's fine and wonderful. But one thing that I saw that really hit home for me was when Abigail and I were talking to a group of Cubans who came through the southern border, and it brought me back to my childhood. Our family, our house was kind of an open door. We always had relatives from Cuba who would show up at various points, throughout our lives and would stay with us. We have a steel factory on the west side of Cleveland. We'd kind of help them get on their feet, get them a job, get them clothing, whatever, shelter, and then they'd move on. And when we sat there and we were talking to the one young lady, and we said, who are you going to find? And she said, I'm going to find my mother. And she started crying. She said, I haven't seen her in 4 years. And for me, what I saw there was my own family. I mean, I saw people, I didn't know that as a kid, but I basically saw my past and the people who had been in and out of my life as a child and as an adult sitting in that chair. And I think when you can put a human face on anything, certainly creates a sense of urgency that maybe you didn't have. And again, as has been said, this is the right group. This is the right group for this problem. There's nobody else, I don't believe, in Congress, no group in Congress that's going to actually do the work and has a chance of solving it. But I think this one does. And so I'm just proud to be here.
To follow up on something you said, you've spoken a lot about speaking with officials. You did speak to some of the migrants. What did they speak to in terms of the conditions they were in or their own stories?
Yeah, so I'm a Spanish speaker. I spoke at every facility we went to freely with people that we saw there. At the first facility, the Donna facility, where you had families together, I spoke with multiple women from Honduras, from El Salvador, there with their young children. The women I spoke with all arrived on Tuesday. So they've only been here just a few days. They had young children. The oldest child I spoke to was 9. There were little kids. They were wrestling, and I spoke to the women. They left Honduras and El Salvador, respectively, because they were fearful. One woman recounted that she had seen someone murdered, and that she was told that they would be coming for her. So she left, and she left with her husband and her child, and she made her way to the U.S. At a subsequent facility, I spoke also with adults and with children who were a bit gleeful to joke. I met a little girl. I told her my name was Abigail in Spanish, and she squealed with delight because that's her sister's name. And so there were really human moments with these kids. And I asked them where they were from. I asked them how they're doing, it's hard. They're in tragic circumstances, but even in the tragic circumstances, there was a glimmer of fun when the girls were showing me their Frozen T-shirts. When we stopped and saw the unaccompanied minors at the facility for 13 to 18-year-old boys, there was this one boy we spoke to who is unbelievable with a Rubik's Cube.
Yeah.
And so they were sitting down, and Paul from Michigan went and messed it all up. And we all stood there for a solid 3 minutes while this boy did the Rubik's Cube faster than anything I've ever seen. And so, and I asked the adults, how are you doing? And they're in difficult, challenging, unimaginable circumstances. But if they, not to speak for them, but if they didn't believe that they could find better here, they wouldn't have endured what they've endured so far. And so having the moments, the direct contact and holding hands with little kids, the experience was, it was very, very difficult. And when I go home to my kids, I'm going to hold them a bit tighter and be grateful for the privilege of being born in this country. But we had, to answer any questions about that, we had direct access with anyone we wanted to have access with, and all of us took the opportunity, and we've got other members who speak Spanish and had the same option.
Congresista, me platicaba que hablaba español. La audiencia hispana, ¿podrías compartir algo de lo que se vivió el día de hoy?
Okay. Hoy día fuimos con ese grupo de demócratas y republicanos a visitar las facilidades donde hay personas que vinieron aquí en estas semanas pasadas. Tuvimos la oportunidad de hablar con ellos, de hablar de las dificultades que ellos han tenido, las historias que han vivido. Y hay historias de esperanza, hay historias de una esperanza que este país puede ser todo lo que han imaginado. Hay dificultades en este centros, pero todavía veía yo esperanza. Hay dificultades para las agentes también. Una cosa que yo noto es que habían personas que han muerto a causa de el tiempo. Entonces los agentes han puesto señales que dicen siguen las flechas, porque no querían que la gente se perdieran. Entonces, para notar que los agentes estaban tratando de ayudar a la gente a hallar la puesta correcta para salvarles, fue muy impresionante para mí también. Dan?
Eso es verdad.
Well, good.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. When will y'all be heading out? Is it tonight?
No.
Okay, and switching gears here, we do have some information on this area for you. There is a exit closed due to a crash here in the Arizona area on the Loop 202 Red Mountain